Ooh, is this thing on? Okay, this one is going to be about... Oh, man. This is going to be a good one. It's going to be why this generation, and really, I guess you could say the generation before that, they just missed out on the Attitude Era. Like, basically, this one is going to be about how spoiled we got with the Attitude Era. It was an unbelievable time for professional wrestling. I don't see how anybody can argue that. It was amazing. It really was. The Attitude Era spoiled us. And it really did. Now, just the origins of the Attitude Era. I wish him the absolute best. Bret the Hitman Hart is going through some medical problems. But he was around during the embryo of the Attitude Era. You have to give credit where credit's due. Honestly, he is a different type of professional wrestler, and he probably wouldn't even want to be put into that. I almost guarantee that he wouldn't want to be associated with the direction that they went in, because when he was in the company, he was saying that for his last, I don't know, not even last year, really. The way they were pushing Bret's character was making him to be a strong heel in the Attitude Era context. Obviously, the Montreal screw job, everybody knows about that. Well, they should, at least. You should know about that. That was a really, really big thing in the late 90s for wrestling. In real life, after that event happened, that occurrence, Bret Hart did not know that was going to happen. He really did. He fucking punched him. He punched Vince McMahon. he did. That was the last time that he was with the company before he came back. He came back like 2010 and actually fought Mr. McMahon at WrestleMania that year. It was like 12, 13 years. He comes back and, starts the feud basically right where it left off, I guess. I don't know. Bret Hart, Steve Austin were very big rivals in the late 96 and early 97. Actually, that WrestleMania that year for 97, WrestleMania 13, he was his opponent. That was one of the main events for WrestleMania 13. It was a submission match with Ken Shamrock as the guest referee. That was the first time that he ever did anything really big with WWF at the time. So that was basically like his first major appearance. Bret Hart is definitely one of the guys that was instrumental in the Attitude Era, even if it was only for that beginning year. It's stuff like that. It's like a gradual thing. It was just like a crazy time to just see all the stuff, seeing the direction that wrestling was going into. We have Stone Cold Steve Austin. Obviously, he is probably, if not the sole... I don't want to say the sole reason for the Attitude Era. If there was, a Mount Rushmore for the Attitude Era, if he's not on it, then they don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't. So that's just the way it goes, man. He did things that no other professional wrestler ever did or never thought you could do. Just what he did. Not even just his numbers, just all the stuff he did. Like, you see him beating up his ball. Like, this is what you're doing at your job or whatever. Like, this is wrestling. Flipping everybody off, and, drinking beers, and just he used to drive all these trucks in his crazy, look, what is he doing? This is crazy, man. On his rise to the top of this Attitude Era, hierarchy thing, he was, beating up everybody. He was stunned, every single week he would stun somebody different, because he had, a neck injury, and they didn't want him to actually compete, but he was still at the show. To keep his momentum rolling. He was smart. And he basically risked his, health almost to do that. But, he was still had, actually, not just be there, he was still, beating up people. He was still stunning people. At one point, he actually stunned Jim Ross, which, I don't know. There was no limits. He would stun anybody. He stunned Jerry Lawler, Jim Ross, at the time, he was Commissioner Sergeant Slaughter. And then, in MSG, finally, that fateful day, Monday Night Raw, he finally stuns Vince McMahon. And it was just unbelievable. The place went nuts. They went nuts, man. And, you know, the thing that people don't really, I don't want to take away from it, because everybody already knows all about it. But, you know, McMahon and Bret Hart did get into blows, and he knocked over Vince McMahon. It looked like it was an accident, but he fucking shoved him. He shoved him down when he grabbed the mic that time, and that was months before. That was like in early 1997. That happened when, you know, when Austin stunned McMahon. It was like September of '97. And obviously both of those times were on Raw. Rocky Maivia, which eventually he changed his name to The Rock, because, you know, this was, like I said, the embryo building into it. He was still kind of called Rocky Maivia. They booed him. They booed him. They're like, oh, Rocky sucks, Rocky sucks. When he was a good guy. I'm talking about Rocky Maivia back when he had like the high top fade with the crazy hair flopping around. He, you know, eventually turned heel and joined the Nation of Domination, and rest is history. I mean, The Rock on the mic, I don't think there's very few people that can beat The Rock as far as cutting a promo. I mean, he is just impeccable. It's just unbelievable. Like, he's got a gift. He really does. For just fucking, he just has it on the mic. He has it. The matches he had with Stone Cold Steve Austin, they will stand the test of time. As long as professional wrestling is around, those matches will be around. They had classic matches at WrestleMania. The first time they had a WrestleMania main event was WrestleMania 15. The Rock was the champion at the time. And, you know, despite him being a really strong heel, a lot of people still like The Rock, even if they love to hate him. They loved everything he did. I think Jerry Lawler even said it. He's like, you know, me being a bad guy announcer, I can't boo it. I can't say bad stuff about this guy. Like, you know, it's just too funny. I can't do it. You know, like that's funny. Like him having to sit there and actually, you know, he obviously said it, you know, on one of the DVDs or something. But it's like for him to actually say that, you know, him being such a professional, you know, heel commentator, it's just kind of funny that he actually says that. That, you know, I can't, you know, I have to break character. I can't boo The Rock. You know, not boo him. I can't, you know, talk bad about him. You know, he's talking about Poo-Tang Pie and, you know, SmackDown Hotel and all this stuff. You know, it's just, it's too funny. And, you know, he knows that. You know, he knows deep down that it really is just entertaining. You know, I remember watching that. It's just certain things like that stick in my head. Undertaker could be put in there because Kane came in at around that time, and it's the whole storyline with those two. The storylines back then were so elaborate. Each of these huge, you know, months, year in storylines, they draw these storylines out for like months at a time, almost a year, and, you know, longer sometimes for these. And it's all separate storylines, all original storylines. You know, sometimes they intertwine with other ones. Like, it was just unbelievable. Like, this was like theatrics. It really was. They had the thing with him, you know, with The Undertaker, and saying that he burned down, you know, he killed his parents, something like he burned the house down or something. And he said that it scarred his brother Kane forever. You know, crazy memory, and he's like scarred for life, literally and figuratively, from, you know, this fire that his older brother set. And you know, killed his family, and it didn't kill his brother. He thought that he was dead. He thought Kane was dead. He was not. And it was just like this whole thing, and you know, Paul Bearer, you know, being instrumental at that, because obviously he had turned his back on The Undertaker. He joined Mankind in SummerSlam in '96 when he turned on The Undertaker in the Boiler Room Brawl. He hits The Undertaker right smack dab in the head with the urn. Never ever, I'll never forget that. That was one of the biggest turns ever wrestling. Because I don't think anybody saw that coming. I really don't. But yeah, Paul Bearer did that. He went and did the whole thing, and you know, was instrumental in that crazy storyline with him and Kane, and, you know, Undertaker and Kane, and then they're joined together in Brothers of Destruction. You know, obviously that was after they had already fought at WrestleMania 14, which was in 1998. So they had this whole big build-up for like close to a year. Kane first appeared in the Bad Blood '97, and oh man, it's like probably one of the best debuts ever for wrestling. I mean, he comes in, this was the first ever Hell in a Cell match. It wasn't called Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. It was Bad Blood in Your House in October of 1997. And, you hear this crazy music, and you hear this fire, and he comes out with Paul Bearer. McMahon, Vince McMahon, because he was still announcer at the time. He's like, that's gonna be Kane. Like, it's just, oh my God. Like, it was just so, you don't get feelings like that with wrestling anymore. You just don't, man. I bet you deep down, I know he has to stay, politically correct and PG, but I know he misses all that crazy stuff that they used to do. I know he does. Because he really is a fan at heart. He may be, kind of nuts and stuff, but he is a wrestling fan at heart. I know that. I'm talking about McMahon, Vince McMahon. But yeah, he's like, oh, that's gotta be Kane, and he ripped the door off he fucking ripped the door off of the cell, oh man. So he rips the door off of the actual, because it was like it was a cell, so it had like space in between, but he ripped the door off of the cell anyway. It was just like the craziest thing anybody had ever seen for a debut. And he comes into the ring, and Shawn Michaels is laid out, fucking. He's like practically almost unconscious. If he might have been at that time. I don't know. He got his ass kicked in that match. Okay. So he comes in there. Kane comes in there to confront the Undertaker for the first time. Nobody had ever seen this before. This is the first time these two were ever, face to face. So he comes in. The Undertaker, he looked like he was. This is probably like the first time I've ever seen, anybody has ever seen the Undertaker actually be scared. Like he looked scared. Like Kane goes like this, like for the first time, and does the flame thing. And he turns around like, oh, what the hell is this? And then he tombstones him. Tombstones the Undertaker. Uses his own hold on him. Shawn Michaels literally crawls out of a pool of his own blood and, barely gets a cover and wins the match because of Kane. So, I mean, it's just that whole thing. That was probably one of the craziest debuts for wrestling. But, all that aside, that whole storyline with Kane and the Undertaker, I know I'm kind of going all over the place here. There was just so much going on. It really was. Undertaker, I don't know, he went in a crazy direction. He formed a Ministry of Darkness and ended up siding with Vince McMahon after this crazy very elaborate storyline with Vince McMahon's daughter, which honestly probably didn't have to really do that one. That was a really graphic one where they actually abduct Stephanie McMahon. The Ministry of Darkness abducts Stephanie McMahon. Some of the stuff they did was kind of over the top, just to be over the top, and I think that was one of the things that they went too far with. You had that, then you had, DX. DX was very, very instrumental in the Attitude Era. I think they should get a lot more credit for being a part of the Attitude Era, in the sense of they took a lot of heat when Shawn got the belt after obviously the screw job. DX, they did all this like crazy theatrical stuff. See, that's the thing. A lot of the stuff with the Attitude Era wasn't really about wrestling. It was more about like your promos and like how you just go over the top. DX was one of those groups that did that. And I think they did it in such a different way that struck the young. I mean, you gotta remember, like, we were young watching this stuff too. So I mean, at the time, it probably was some of the stuff they did. We probably shouldn't even been watching it. But I mean, they did some crazy stuff. After Shawn left in 1998, the WrestleMania 14, lost the belt to Stone Cold Steve Austin, the first time Austin ever got the belt, the world title. So, Shawn takes like 4 years off, but after that, Triple H forms like a new DX, and honestly, I think that DX was like better. Triple H, I mean, you gotta give credit where credit's due with him. Like, he was in a position in his career where he could have like flopped on that, because he was not really like the biggest yet at all. He was not the big. Shawn was the star at that time. Like, yeah, he was the big star, and Triple H was, I don't want to say riding his coattails, but he was like the sidekick. It's just the truth. So by him being like the leader of like the coolest group of the Attitude Era shows what he brought to the table at that time, and obviously helped build him up very, very well. And he did really good with it. You know, I did actually enjoy that DX more than the DX originally with Shawn Michaels in China. And in the beginning stages, Rick Rude was a part of it, but he was just kind of like there. The new DX was X-Pac. He comes back. He was in WCW for, I really don't remember how long. I think it was a few years. So he was originally 1-2-3 Kid. He comes back as X-Pac now, and then later on in the night, and this is the night after WrestleMania 14. So yeah, so like I always say, all the crazy stuff happens after, night after WrestleMania, the Raw after WrestleMania, as they say. It's like its own thing. So then Road Dogg Jesse James and Badass Billy Gunn, who were originally, they actually had their own group before they were in DX. They were called the New Age Outlaws. And, they were still the New Age Outlaws. They were just in DX also. So that was a crazy group, man. Obviously, China was still with the group. They had all kind of characters. Some of the sexual stuff, like there was, like I said, I didn't get into all the other, like, I guess supporting character. Like I said, this whole thing was almost like separate movies, and it's just like everybody played their role. You had Sexual Chocolate, and you had who else? You had Val Venis. Like they had a lot of these characters in wrestling at this time were very like sexual and just so raunchy. Like you just never, this was never a part of wrestling. Not to that extent. Not like, I mean, they had like, how do you say it? Like they had some characters like that, like in the 80s and 90s, but not to that extent at all. Sexual Chocolate, Mark Henry, like what the fuck? Val Venis, they said he was like a porn star. Like this is crazy. You know what I mean? But then, like, there was this thing with, he was hooking up with Mae Young at the time, playing it off and stuff. It's just crazy. Like, the Mae Young gives birth to a hand, and this is, like, I don't know. Like I said, some of the stuff they did, they just pushed the envelope a little bit, so just to push it, just to like, okay, we got to top what we did last, like, I don't know. I mean, that was just, I guess, the nature of the beast when you're, going to that level. One of the really big stars for, talking about being very sexual was the Godfather. He would come out with all these hoes, and, it was crazy. He'd come out with the hoes, and he would just, go off saying, if you don't want to compete tonight and you don't want to wrestle me, you could take one of the hoes with you, of your choosing. It was crazy, man. This was wrestling. Unbelievable, man. Like I said, I don't ever think there'll be another era like this at all. But yeah, definitely Godfather is one of the pillars of the Attitude Era, and he just, I'm telling you, I think people went there just to see the Ho Train. Not everybody, obviously, but I'm sure there were some people that was the thing they were looking forward to the most. Actually going to the events. It was crazy. It really was. Another one from the Attitude Era, I would say, would be Gangrel and the Brood. Now, they were definitely like a whole different section of, being in the whole idea of attitude, but they still count because they have a different kind of attitude. Now, Gangrel originally started by himself, and he went and formed the Brood. Edge originally started by himself, but then he went in with the Brood after Christian came in. But yeah, Gangrel did originally start by himself, and he, basically dressed like a vampire. He had fangs, and, it was just crazy. He would come up from the ring, and there was this ring of fire from the entrance part of the, like the ramp. And there would be like a ring of fire around him, and he would rise from it. He had this goblet, you know, this like ancient looking goblet. And he would come out and like, you know, before he would enter the ring, he would, you know, drink it and spit it out, and, you know, spit out blood and shit. You know, it's supposed to be blood. So I mean, like, it was like so many theatrics back then. It was crazy. And then, you know, out of nowhere, the lights would turn out and the lights would turn back on, and somebody would be doused with, you know, drenched in blood. You know, like, what the fuck? You know, it was like the stuff that happened was very, very, very unpredictable. Another thing during the Attitude Era, this is how a lot of stuff, you know, so-called got leaked. It was already supposed to be on TV anyway, but it was the GTV thing. I definitely have to mention GTV. It was like basically like the fly on the wall of the Attitude Era. And it was really original. Almost everything that the Attitude Era embodied was originality, pretty much. For wrestling, at least. You know what I mean? Like, nobody had ever seen any of this stuff for wrestling. They used to have commercials and stuff on, you know? They're like telling you, oh, we're changing everything. Like, we're making it crazy. Like, they're like being honest, you know? Like, it's just, like I said, it's just like you've never seen anything like this. And they did it all to compete with WCW with this ratings war thing. That's what basically the entire reasoning of doing all this crazy stuff. That's what it was all for. It was just a fun time to be a wrestling fan. I'm sure it was a fun time to be a wrestler. Looking back at it now, it's like so crazy to sit there and see all this. Like, this is like what we used to watch every single week, you know? Like, we were just like, oh, okay. Well, they're just getting a little crazy. Oh, whatever, we'll just keep watching it. And just, you know, at the time, we didn't really notice how crazy it was. I think it's until they stopped doing all that. You know what I'm saying? It really is true. You know, you don't notice what you have until you don't have it no more. Anybody that watches this, if they did watch some of the Attitude Era, you know, you're in the same boat as me. You know, we had it was a great era of wrestling, but just in general, just to kind of wrap this whole thing up, like, just nowadays, wrestling is just not like that at all. Like, the unpredictability and just the craziness and just, like, it was, like, so much excitement. That's the thing. Like, you hear these crowds go nuts at these events. Like, that's what it was really about. Like, it's just getting these reactions out of these people. Like, when you heard that glass break, you hear, like, you think it's like a fucking, I don't know, like a fucking a world-renowned band or just, you know, like a fucking concert about to begin. You know, this is one person. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't even come out yet. You just hear the glass break and they fucking go nuts. You know, obviously talking about Stone Cold's music, but it's just, you know, unbelievable. Like, you don't get that anymore. You really don't. Like, it's just not there. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the PG era, the PC era in society, but it's just like, I don't know. Like, it's just, there's just something missing. It really is. That's why I say, you know, I stick by what I said. We got spoiled with the Attitude Era. We really did. We had two huge icons of wrestling. They were in the same company. I'm talking about The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. They were both basically on the rise practically at the same time. And they constantly were fighting each other. Like, you can't, if you're a hardcore wrestling fan, you cannot ask for anything more. They were in the same company. I mean, they were like that was it. That was the rivalry of the Attitude Era. If you have any question of that, you have no idea what you're talking about, okay? Those two guys were it. Nowadays, the only other rivalry within the last, like, 5 years that I would ever compare to those two would maybe be John Cena and CM Punk. Everybody is different the way they go about being a role model or, you know, babyface and being a hit. Like, Punk was original. Don't twist it around. He was around for a while, but he finally got his break in like 2011 because he wanted to branch out and you know, be a star, and he became a star. That pipe bomb promo that he did, that was, you know, very Attitude Era-esque. It definitely caught my attention when I watched it. Oh man, I mean, he talked about everything. He talked about all the other promotions, and just like all this shit. Like, when I saw that promo, I'm sure just like everybody else, they woke up and like, oh, this guy. He was talking all this. I mean, he was saying stuff that was probably almost all true. Okay. And he's just speaking straight from the gut. You know, he's fucking just laying into everybody that has pissed him off in this business. And his microphone gets cut off. That would have never, ever happened in the Attitude Era, okay? All the crazy stuff that Stone Cold said, let alone did. DX said all kind of crazy stuff. All those sexual innuendos. And just, like, you know, they would bring out sausages and just, you know, Shawn Michaels comes out with his underwear and they're playing strip poker. You know, like, all that crazy shit they did. And, you know, just, there was a whole bunch of stuff. Austin used to beat up Vince McMahon, okay? Like, what the fuck? And you know, it just shows how different the business changed in, like, 10, 12 years. 12 years ago. That was in 2011, the pipe bomb promo, they call it. It just shows how different the business has changed from then to now. You had Stone Cold Steve Austin beating the living shit out of Vince McMahon. And Vince McMahon hears things that CM Punk is saying that he doesn't want to hear, and he cuts his fucking mic off. How much more of a distinction can you get? Almost definite. If it wasn't McMahon, he was the one that told the person to fucking turn the shit off. Alright, there's no question about that. Whether he was at the event or not, whether he called them and told them to fucking turn off the mic. You know, like, it's just like a crazy way to show how different the business has changed. And it's a really, you know, it was, nobody had, I mean, obviously nobody knew that promo was going to happen. Like I said, they did show it in its entirety, but they cut him off still. If something like that would happen, I don't ever see wrestling going back to that. I mean, the necessity for them doing all that crazy stuff was to compete with the company that they essentially, in the end, ended up buying. So, I mean, that's like from a business standpoint, but just in the general sense, I don't even really see that happening anyway. After they bought WCW, it's kind of like when the popularity of, like, wrestling in general kind of started to diminish, I think. Obviously, I still watched it. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people still watched it after that. But it was like, I don't know. It was just like an end of an era kind of thing. That's probably going to be the only time you'll ever see wrestling like that. And just the business in general. I don't ever see wrestling getting to that point. At least not while, you know, while our generation, you know, was still living, you know. And I'm taking a line from the Hulkster with that one. You know, he said his career, but it's just, oh, you know what? I may not be able to talk about Hulk Hogan now, right? Well, you know what? I don't work for WWE, so I can talk about any wrestler I want to, okay? Unbelievable how they don't even get me started with that. Don't get me wrong, wrestling still has a huge following. It really does. And it's like, it's just not as crazy. It's just the way it is. It was not crazy before the Attitude Era, you know. People still loved it. Alrighty, well, I am done with this video. Anybody that did, you know, enjoy the Attitude Era, you know, leave comments, like it if you want. You know, leave, you know, comments about your favorite Attitude Era memories. You know, if you ever went to any events, and just like anything, you know, just any special moment that sticks out in your head. You know, I definitely appreciate that. But that's it, man. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, and I will see you when I see you.